Quantities are limited. More information in the description section of this video.
Hello everybody, I am the Amazing Atheist, and this video is going to be unedited, which means that it will contain errors, sometimes egregious ones, and I will mispronounce words, and there will be times where I pause and stare blankly at the camera, like this. Yeah, that's gonna happen, so forgive it when it does. But I gotta get through these questions, because I asked for questions from you, the viewer, the brilliant viewer, and your brilliant questions. Why do I always burp? I tried to hold it in, but it didn't work. Mystery. Oh wait, I'm drinking carbonated beverages. Maybe that could be the reason. Here's a question. Have you been an atheist all of your life? Or have you converted like me? Not really converted. I was like 7 or 8. Well, you know, it's very hard to answer a question like that simply because you never really know where you stand when you're just a little kid. You don't really understand the issue in that all-encompassing way that you do as an adult, or at least that you hopefully do as an adult. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't necessarily know everything there was to know about God or religion, and of course I still don't, but I know a lot more. So I was an atheist as a kid, but I don't know if it was necessarily based on reason or logic. It was probably just based on the fact that I just never believed in that whole God thing. You know, they said, oh, God is watching, and the rain is God's tears, and whenever something good happens to you, you have to thank God, and whenever something bad happens to you, you know, you need to pray to God to show you the way, and, you know, and meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, I don't see this guy, you know, something good just happened to me, but I didn't see him doing it. I didn't, looking around, not seeing this God. And, you know, you ask, where is he? And he's up in the sky, he's invisible, and you look at the adults like, oh, this is like Santa Claus. You guys are having a little fun at my expense because you think I'm retarded. But then later on, you grow up and you realize, holy shit, they actually believe this. This is like Santa Claus for adults. And I think I'm not the first atheist to make that observation, but that's how I felt as a kid. I was like, whoa, they actually believe this. You know, when I was a kid, I literally thought adults were just fucking with me. There came a point, I guess, when my atheism did sort of crystallize. There was this little IQ test. It wasn't a formalized, you know, answer-driven IQ test where, you know, they say, you know, what is the square root of this, or whatever the fuck is on actual IQ tests. It was all about pattern recognition. It should have been called a pattern recognition test, really. And you were shown 4 images that had similar patterns, and you had to predict what was the next pattern in the sequence based on the differences in each of these images. And at the end, it gives you a little score. And I got a score, I think, of 185, which was higher by far than anyone else in my family. And my stepfather accused me of cheating. He's like, oh, you cheated on that test, boy. Ain't no one be able to fucking figure this out. This shit's just too complicated. You cheated. And I'm like, I swear to God I didn't cheat. And he's like, you don't even believe in God. Which was something he just said in anger. I don't think he really believed that I didn't believe in God. But it was the moment that I realized, hey, that's an option. I don't have to believe in God. You know, it's possible to deny the existence of God. Because before that, it was never really explained to me that I could say to myself, this isn't real. I could say to others, I don't believe in this. And it was at that moment that became crystallized to me. And that was the moment I realized I was an atheist, although I think it was still a few more years before I actually learned the word atheist. But as soon as I knew it, I knew that it was me. In fact, I think I knew that I was an atheist before I actually heard the word atheist, because I remember driving home with my mother one night and asking her, what are people called who don't believe in God? And she said, atheists. And I said, I'm an atheist. And then she started crying, but that doesn't need to be talked about, I guess. I mean, I guess I could if someone cares, but whatever. I think I've talked about it before anyway. Next question. What do you think of the proposal that near-death experience provides strong evidence, albeit not proof, of an afterlife and separation of consciousness from the body? Well, you know, it doesn't really support that because, first of all, plenty of people on the operating table die and then they come back and they didn't see shit. They don't have any recollection of the bright light and the angels and the choir and the hallelujah. And then there are people who never died. People, you know, like astronauts training in the little centrifuge thing. And they're exposed to that really, really ultra-high G-force, and then they start to have this out-of-body experience, like, oh, wow, and they see the light and the tunnel and that feeling of being out of body. So if we can scientifically replicate those feelings, it seems to me that those feelings are something that's going on inside the brain. Just because we have a feeling of being outside of the body doesn't mean that we necessarily are. It just means that we have that feeling. And if we know how to induce that feeling, then that pretty much shows that it is, regardless of how we perceive it, something that's happening in our own minds. So, next question. If you could criminalize something as well as decriminalize something else, what would they be? Well, I think if we're going to talk about let's examine the words criminalize and decriminalize first of all. You can only criminalize things. You cannot decriminalize things. To decriminalize something is to suggest that it has some inherently criminal property. And when they say decriminalize marijuana, I'm like, no. You know, there's nothing, you know, even when you see legalize marijuana, no, it's not something that we're making legal because it is in a natural state of being illegal. You know, what you really want to say is repeal the law against marijuana, repeal anti-marijuana legislation, return us to the natural state of marijuana being legal, return us to the natural state of heroin being legal, return us to the natural state where everything is legal, because all laws are man-made things and they're designed to control people. That's the only reason laws exist. You know, laws exist to keep people in line. Laws exist because we feel like if we don't have them, society is inherently doomed to failure. But the big secret about laws that no one tells you is that they don't work. They don't work. They never have worked. You know, they tried to criminalize alcohol in the 1920s and throughout some of the 30s. It did not work. People still drank. How long has marijuana been illegal? I know tons of people who smoke marijuana. Tons upon tons of people who smoke marijuana. I know people who smoke marijuana who are against marijuana being legalized. That is how many people I know who smoke marijuana. I know doctors who smoke marijuana. I know lawyers who smoke marijuana. I know all sorts of professional people who smoke marijuana, and I know all sorts of people who are anything but professional who smoke marijuana. So this big, scary law, this act of prohibition, has not stopped anyone from smoking marijuana. And I don't think that any laws are effective. I don't think that having a law against murder stops people from being murderers. I don't think having a law against rape stops people from being rapists. I don't think that having a law against child molestation stops people from molesting children. Even the child molesters who have been to prison and get out, most of them still go and molest another child. So the law is not preventing this behavior. It just doesn't work. It's too abstract. It's too much of a long-term consequence. Even after experiencing it, even after experiencing the punishment for their crimes, people still go and commit the same crimes. You know, that's why you have things like the 3 strikes law in California, where people who commit the same crime 3 times, or not even necessarily the same crime, but they get involved in crime and arrested 3 separate times, then they get a life sentence. all because they are not able to stop themselves from getting involved in these criminal enterprises. So it's pretty obvious that criminalization just doesn't work. It doesn't work to say, this is now against the law. So the only reason that the only reason that we have these laws is to punish people. We figure, a lot of people think that it stops these things, but it doesn't. So the only reason to have them is to punish people. The only reason to have a law against child molestation is to punish child molesters. The only reason to have a law against murder is to punish murderers. So it's basically just giving them the societal equivalent of a severe spanking and saying, or if we sentence them to death, then that's hey, don't kill people or we'll kill you. When you do it, it's a horrendous crime. When we do it, that's justice. But it's not justice. I'm getting a little bit off track here, but the point is that laws are just useless things. They don't do anything for us whatsoever. And I know that there are instances where people say, oh, well, what about when the police go on strike, then suddenly crime skyrockets. All of a sudden there's a huge rash of bank robberies and store robberies and people go looting. Well, yeah, those are crimes of convenience. That's because you suddenly have the absence of some controlling force that you had before. That doesn't mean that in the long term, if you lost that controlling force, you would suddenly be left with a system where crime is just constantly rampant. There's plenty of places in America that don't really have much of a police force, or they have a very minimal police force, and they manage to not have rampant, terrible crime at all times. I think if you look at the reasons that underlie crime, they're not to do with a lack of stringent enforcement for the most part. So, the answer to your question, I suppose, is that we should repeal all laws and let things take care of themselves. And, whatever. I know that people will say I'm an anarchist for suggesting that, but I'll get into later why I'm not an anarchist. If you could have any superpower, which would it be? If I could have any superpower, I would have the superpower of absolute persuasion. The superpower... God damn it. The superpower of absolute persuasion is the ability to persuade anyone of anything at any time. It's not as straightforward as something like mind control, per se. Hold on. Okay, sorry. It's not as it's like mind control, but more subtle, because it actually involves me talking to people and just somehow inherently knowing what they have to hear to sway them to my point of view. Something is very appealing about that. The ability to know exactly what to say to anyone at any time to make them think anything. And I wonder if such a power could even exist, because I wonder if there is really a perfect combination of words where I could walk up to someone like Jesus Freak, or Venom Fang X, or any number of other YouTube Christians, and if there is something I could say, a sequence of words that I could say and deliver with a certain body language, a certain cadence, that would literally destroy their faith. Just like that. Like I could make them atheists. And I also wonder if there is a perfect combination of words and sentiments and body language and tone of voice that I could walk up to Thunderfoot and turn him into a radical Muslim in one conversation. I wonder if that power of perfect persuasion exists, which is why I want it. Because I want to see if it could be real. what to you is the difference between a hardcore viewer and an average viewer? Well, the difference to me between a hardcore viewer of my videos and the average viewer of my videos is that the hardcore viewer will watch this entire, however long this ends up being video, and I'm sure it will be over an hour, maybe even approaching 2, maybe even surpassing 2. I don't really know how long it's going to take me to answer each one of these questions yet. But they will watch the whole fucking thing. They will watch every video that I put up, even the shit that doesn't interest them in the slightest. They will watch it. They will comment on it. The average viewer, on the other hand, will look at this and say, oh shit, fucking hour and a half, 2 hours? Fuck that. I don't have that much time. Who the fuck does he think I am? He's gonna think I'm gonna waste my time listening to his fat ass? I mean, he's funny sometimes, but I ain't gonna listen to this shit. You know, or someone who, you know, every once in a while, when I have a catchy title or a cool screen cap, they'll be like, yeah, that looks like a cool video. And, you know, they're subscribed, but they watch maybe 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10 videos, or they watch, you know, maybe a video from me every month or so. That's an average viewer. So it's a big difference. And obviously the more hardcore viewers are the ones who do things like buy my t-shirt. Although I've tried to make a t-shirt that looks so cool that it can even appeal to people who aren't really hardcore fans. That's why I didn't just put my name on a shirt. I actually went out and found a real artist to design a really badass shirt. So it looks like a Norwegian death metal band shirt, which I think is appropriate because I like those bands have a lot of angry parents who write me on a normal basis telling me how I've corrupted their kids, and I also have kids telling me that their parents hate me and they have banned me from watching, they've banned their kids from watching my channel and all this. So I think that's pretty cool that I have, you know, I never got to be a rock star like I wanted to when I was growing up, which is what I really wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to be this big rock star because I mean, you know, I had no musical talent, and I obviously am not like some kind of deeply sexually attractive guy that girls are going to swoon for or anything. So, you know, it never actually happened. And plus I don't work well in groups, which you have to kind of do to be, you know, that kind of person. But it's still cool that I somehow managed to capture a glimmer of that rock star danger where parents are like, ooh! You know, and not all parents are like that, obviously. Some people tell me, like, me and my kids all watch your videos together. My whole family gathers round and watches The Amazing Atheist, which is even weirder and scarier, actually. So, yeah. That's the difference. Can you make a compelling argument for subjective morality? You know, I don't think I have to make a compelling argument for subjective morality. I think I just have to make compelling arguments against subjective morality, against objective morality, rather. Because, you know, there really is no good argument. I mean, most of the people who argue for objective morality are people like, you know, Christians or Muslims, religious people, theists. They have this idea that, oh, there is a God and he has declared that we have this perfect morality. You know, you see Jesus Freak arguing for this in one of his more recent videos where he says, oh, even babies have shown signs of having morality. Therefore, God must have given it to them. And then, you know, there's people like Richard Dawkins who talk about the evolutionary roots of morality. It's like, oh, we humans are innately moral creatures based on our evolution. You know, when it comes to the God morality, first of all, even if there was a God, why would his morality be the perfect morality? Just because he created the universe doesn't mean he's right on morality. Because if you believe in God and you believe in free will, then you cannot possibly have an objective morality, because free will means the ability to choose what you want to do. So, you know, if God is going to say there is a proper choice and an improper choice, then that negates free will. you have the choice to you have the ability to make the wrong choice. I mean, what sense does that make when the consequences are eternal hellfire? That's like putting a gun to your head and saying, you can choose to say that I'm the greatest person ever, and then you don't get shot, or you can choose to call me an asshole and then you do get shot. I mean, what kind of fucking choice is that? So, but if we don't have free will, if it's all just chemicals reacting to stimuli, then how can you have any objective morality in that situation either? Because people really aren't in control of what they do. It's all just haphazard particles bumping into one another in this endless plane, and everything that we think and feel is all just an illusion. It's something that we perceive to be, well, it's not an illusion, but it's an illusion that we're in control of it. When we are attracted to someone, when we, lose our temper and end up murdering our entire family or something like that, it's our illusion that we're under control, that we can control that we can stop that from happening. But in reality, it's all just a bunch of shit bumping together inside of our heads. How can there be an objective morality in that situation? But let's say there is no God, because there isn't. And we go with the Richard Dawkins thing, where we have this inherent morality. Well, what does that mean? I mean, why do we have to be beholden to that morality? This inherent, intrinsic morality that just exists within all of us naturally, with the trolley experiment, and we all feel that it's wrong to do this, but right to do this, and it's equivalent moral actions and all that. Why are we beholden to that? Why do we have to stick with that morality? We don't stick with everything else evolution gave us. We don't form little tribes and kill outsiders. I mean, well, we still do to some extent, in some ways, but we frown upon that. Plenty of stuff that we did, to survive evolutionarily and pass on our genes and all that, we recognize now as despicable. So, who's now arguing that evolution is this benevolent entity that has our best interest at heart? Evolution's goal is to keep on chugging forward. It doesn't care if it has to throw every individual person in the meat grinder. It doesn't give a shit. So, yeah. There is no objective morality. Unless, and then, well, let me get also into the Ayn Rand idea of objective morality that these objectivists go around spouting, I guess. I should do that before we move on. The Ayn Rand idea about objective morality is really not objective morality, it's just practical morality. Her morality is basically to say, well, you have the right to do anything you want as long as it doesn't take away from the rights of others, because how can there be a right to take away the rights of others? But the only thing that's stopping you from taking away the rights of others is this idea that they have rights. But how is that necessarily objective? The objective facts are that you can take away their rights if you have the power to do so. That is objective. But there's nothing necessarily moral about that either. There is no objective morality. There is objective reality, and there's objective reality, and then there's subjective moralities that try to harness and control that reality, and sometimes they take root and succeed to some extent, and sometimes they don't. But, yeah, there's no objective morality. That's the point I'm trying to make. What do you think is the most delusional and dangerous religion or nationalism? I read that a little bit wrong. It's what do you think is the most delusional and dangerous religion or nationalism? You see what I'm... Yeah, okay. Well, I think if we're going to go by just the numbers, and that seems to be how these things are typically measured, maybe that's not the best method of measuring them, but that's what we got. Who has killed more, religion or the state? And I think the answer is the state, but the state often uses religion to bolster its power, and vice versa. These two things are not necessarily exclusive entities that are wholly separate, and the church and the state are like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. No, these two things, they corroborate. They get together, they decide how things are going to be. You see that even in a mostly secular society like our own, you still have instances where the President of the United States decides that God told him to go invade Iraq, and then everyone else who has this God delusion, as Richard Dawkins would say it, decides that, yeah, God said so. We can't defy God. God wants us to go over there and fuck with these Muslims. You know, who are we to defy God? And then all the moderate Christians, they just say, well, you know, I'm sure he didn't mean it like that. He didn't mean that God told him. He just means that, you know, he asked God for guidance, and God said, follow your heart, George, and George, you know, I'm going to go to Iraq, and that's what happened. You know, and it's only like a small percentage of religious people, and then secularists like myself, who say, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? This is not good. We should not have the president talking about how God told him to invade another country. That scares us, quite frankly. Yeah, so, you know, you want to ask what's more delusional and dangerous? Well, let's say that religion is more delusional and nationalism is more dangerous, but they are the most dangerous and the most delusional when they are working together, which they very, very often do. What kind of education would you like to have had? You know, I think that sometimes the best education is a bad education, because it really teaches you to be distrustful of authority. It teaches you that you're going to have to do things for yourself. You're not going to be able to rely on this power structure to provide for you. Now, some people get the exact wrong message when they go to school. They say, yeah, the power structure, that's going to take care of me. That's going to keep my best interest at heart. But that's not how it works, usually. And there are exceptions. There are very, very, very good, clear exceptions to that rule. For instance, you know, Medicaid and Medicare, both government-run social programs, and both overwhelmingly popular, very, very popular programs. Then you have things like the fire department, which is very effective. You have things like the police department, which I don't necessarily agree with, but they do their jobs very well. If you consider their jobs to be going out and arresting criminals, in quotation marks, scary criminals that are posing a threat to us all, they do that very, very well, which is why we have the highest per capita prison population on the planet. Yeah, so they're very good at going out there and doing their jobs. Very, very effective. And our education system is lousy, by anyone's account. You talk to a conservative, he'll tell you the education system is lousy. You talk to a liberal, they'll tell you the education system is lousy. And it has very little to do with the curriculum, what they're being taught, and it has very little to do, and it has very much to do with how they're being taught, how kids are being instructed. And this is the current system. You sit down, 35 kids in a fucking shitty little room, and some patronizing asshole teacher comes there and says, oh, well, you know, turn your textbooks to page 78 and let's all read about how we're the greatest fucking country in the fucking planet, and probably in the galaxy, and probably in the universe. We're the best. America's number one. And they're all taught about, you know, the great freedoms and the flag, and it's amazing, and George W. Bush is the greatest president, and Obama's a fucking socialist, and Lincoln freed the slaves, and Washington chopped down the cherry tree, but then he told his daddy, I just can't lie to you, daddy, I've done that shit. Yeah, so that's, you know, your little American history class, or, you know, you go to math, and it's like rote learning, boring, lifeless math, where you're not taught anything about how great math, you know, is, or how it can be applied to real life situations, or how it's the key to understanding the universe. You're just taught, you know, 17 times 8 22 divided by 1.6, whatever. You're taught these boring, lifeless equations by these strict, patronizing, condescending douchebag teachers who cannot be fired because they have tenure, they've been working there too long, and they're members of the teachers union, and if you fuck with the teachers union, they'll strike, and you'll be fucked, and you can't get scabs because it's too hard to fucking find scab teachers. It's just impossible to do. So, the main problem with the education system is that teachers are fucking douchebags, and schools really don't encourage any sort of real creativity. They don't really infuse their lessons with any sort of real consequence. They don't teach you how things relate to the world as you know or care about it. They only teach you the cold, hard, boring information. They don't inject any emotion into it. And that's stupid, because human beings are emotional creatures. Information, if we are to master it, must have an emotional weight. And also, schools are not tailored to personal interests. They're not tailored to what the individual cares about. We all have our individual interests and things that we are deeply concerned with at any given time. Maybe you got some little fucking geeky bird watcher kid, and he's really fucking interested in birds, but he's not learning about birds at school all day. He's learning about all this other fucking shit that he doesn't care about at all. Maybe you have some kids that are really good at math who really should be in fucking math class all day, learning about math, learning where it applies, how it applies, etc., etc., etc. But instead, he's fucking stuck in this rounded education system, going to fucking history classes, going to wood shop class, all because we decided that, we'll be fucked if future generations don't know about wood shop. And it's stupid. It's fucking miserably stupid. You cannot force people to care. Maybe you have this idea in your head that everyone should have this beautiful, well-rounded education, and everyone should be a fucking scholar who understands history, and science, and math, and social studies, and geography, and woodwork, and home economics, and civics, and all this stuff, and everyone should just be this fucking ball of fucking homogenized shit where everything just bleeds into one category called general education. But that doesn't fucking work. It never has, it never will. People need to be allowed to follow their specialized interests and fuck everything else. Someone else will take care of that. And if no one else takes care of that, if no one is interested in a subject, then let it rightfully die off. Let it go the fuck away. If no one gives a fuck about woodshop, then woodshop should probably just go. It should probably not be taught any goddamn more. Okay, so that's my answer to that question. I'm interested a bit more in your politics. I believe I have a decent understanding of where you stand, but would you discuss any... Sorry, I keep burping, but this Coke Zero. Would you discuss any labels you would give yourself, or viewpoints that you hold that are a bit out of the ordinary? Well, I think I've already gotten into some viewpoints that are pretty out of the fucking ordinary already, but I'll get into some more. And I'd like to talk about the evolution of social welfare and the welfare state, and how we provide for our citizens here in the United States of America and in all governments. Because we originally started out with monarchies. Well, not originally, but I mean, we had the tribes, and then we had the tribal leader and the shaman, and then, it became towns, and we had the mayor, and his word was law, and then we had these big kingdoms where the king's word was law, and he had something called the divine right of kings, which means that he was selected by God, and that he had rights that no one else on the planet had. He had the right, if the king wanted to, he could walk down the street, walk up to a peasant and take out his sword and chop that fucking peasant's head off and said, this peasant offended me with his look. and no one would say shit. No one could say shit, because he's the king, he can do what he wants. And we don't have monarchy anymore, not in this country anyway, and even in the countries that do have it, it's not what it once was. We don't have monarchy. Obama is not our president. He cannot walk down the street with an AK-47, shooting ordinary citizens and then say, well, they offended me. He would be impeached and imprisoned, and what the fuck happened there? That is not... We don't have the divine right of presidents. They still have too much power, don't get me wrong, but they have significantly less than the leaders of the old world had. So, the question is, what exactly changed, and why did it change? What made us go from the paradigm of, what can I do for my country, to the paradigm of what can my country do for me? The answer is that as these societies have progressed, the forces of commerce, continued to elevate the ordinary citizen, the everyday person. There was a time, and this is something that Howard Bloom gets into in his book, The Genius of the Beast. There was a time when every peasant owned one shirt, and you could not get it laundered because it was made shoddily of cheap materials, and a pair of shoes was a luxury. You did not have shoes. Your shirt was filled with mites because you could not launder it. The mites significantly reduced your longevity. You were starving. Most of the food that you produced went to the nobleman. Most of the goods that you produced went to the nobleman. So you were basically just a serf. You were a little bitch. You had no, you had nothing on your own. And then something happened where the equation changed, and the merchants, formerly the scum of society, rose in wealth beyond the lords. And ever since that day, the merchants have been, through their greed and avarice, they've been raising the standard of living for the normal person. All of a sudden, you get this demand for these new inventions, and then comes into play Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market. And the people demand something, and the merchants fulfill that need. The merchants and the inventors and the entrepreneurs, they fulfill the needs of the people. Hold on. I guess I'm going to have to edit this. And the more wealth that they accrued, the more wealth that they passed on. Not because of some trickle-down economics theory, but because of the fact that they needed a consumer base. They needed people to buy their shit. And the more of their shit that people bought, the more stuff that people had. The more stuff that people had, the more stuff they thought they needed. And we had this consumerism, this rampant consumerism and materialism that, so many people accuse of being, it's the downfall of Western civilization. No, it's exactly what created Western civilization. It's what created every great civilization, and it's what elevated normal people up from the serfs of old to the citizen today who has the right to vote, and some rights of free speech, although not as many as they deserve, and a lot of other rights that people back in the days of serfdom would never have imagined. We can say things about President Barack Obama that the serfs of old would never have dreamed of being able to say about the king, at least not in a public way. And, when they did say these things, if they were caught, they were killed. Yeah. So what do I think the ultimate... if you take this trend... So if you take this trend of people on one end of the spectrum of history being absolute slaves to authority and getting nothing in return, to today where authority is diminished and expectations are raised, I think that the ultimate result and the desired result, in my opinion, is a government that has no authority yet has a huge obligation. A government that cannot tell us what to do, but can give us things like health care and can give us things like a fire... I apologize. Can give us things like health care and a fire department and all of that good stuff that we want. And we pay taxes into it voluntarily because they give us all of this neat stuff. And the people who don't want to pay taxes, fine. They just don't get the neat stuff. And, maybe one day so many people decide that they don't want government help that the government does just become completely irrelevant. But that is how, you have to come to anarchism. You don't come to anarchism by saying, we're going to abolish the government and start anarchism. You start anarchism by phasing out the government. And the first thing you have to phase out is this idea that governments can control the population, because that's not something that's desirable in any way, shape, or form. People need to have control over their own destinies, and but I still think that the social safety net is a good idea, and I don't think that people will ever choose to get rid of that. I think that most people love government programs. They love the fact that the government is there to provide for them. So yeah, I don't think those are going anywhere, and I don't think they should. In fact, I think they should be greatly expanded. I think that people should pay a lot into the government and get a lot out of the government. I think that is in the best interest of every individual. Maybe there will come a day when we're all so rich with resources that that's no longer necessary, and then fine, we can have this anarchist paradise that idiots like Stottles mumble about incoherently in video to video. But until that day, fuck it. No, we don't need that. Do you still have contact with Fake Sagan? Yeah, Fake Sagan, who we prefer to call Case, because I guess that there is someone on XM satellite radio who calls himself Fake Carl Sagan. So Fake Sagan no longer goes by Fake Sagan. He goes by Case, which is actually his earlier name, derived, of course, from Hard Case. He moved very close to me. In fact, he lives no more than 10 minutes away from me. And the reason he did that was, so that, we're very close friends, and he has my moral support, and, he's trying to build his life after getting out of a shitty situation, which I'm sure he doesn't want me to talk about in any way, shape, or form. I don't think he'd mind me mentioning it, but I don't think he wants me to get into it or anything. So, yeah, we're very close. We're very close friends. He is, I think, tied for the position of TJ's best friend. And he's really fun to be around. He's really intelligent. He's fun to talk to. And he has a unique perspective on everything. And we have great discussions. And we fucking have fun playing video games and bullshitting about movies and doing all this stuff. But, I'm probably not the best person to socialize with in general, because I am kind of weird and awkward, and I have no understanding of social cues, and I don't do well in social situations. For instance, one time he was over here playing video games, and I just got up and walked into my room and went to bed. I didn't mention to him that I was going to bed or anything, and they basically, he and his girlfriend stayed out there for another hour or so, thinking, is he coming back? But of course I didn't, because I was asleep. And, I never thought to mention it. It just never occurred to me, because I'm just bad at that sort of thing. I suck at being sociable. But, that's just me. So, yeah. But, yeah, we're very close. At least I think we are. I don't know, because I never really know what he's thinking. Seeing as you're an atheist, do you have a favorite type of baby to eat? This is an offensive stereotype about atheists, this idea that we eat babies. The fact is that we eat children of all ages. They don't have to be infants. We'll eat toddlers, we'll eat small children, we will eat adolescents, and sometimes even teenagers. The thing is, though, it has nothing to do with there's no racial separation between babies. I mean, we're not sitting there like, oh, you know, I'll eat a black baby, but keep that Asian baby away from me. We're not eating that. That's gross. I mean, look, there's not even any booty on this Asian baby. This is nasty. No, you know, we eat babies indiscriminately, you know, regardless of race, regardless of their political beliefs of their parents or anything like that. You know, what is a lot more important than the type of baby that you have is the preparation method. You know, a baby that is grilled on the barbecue is obviously a very different, you know, and even if it's a charcoal barbecue or a gas barbecue, that's going to make a difference. You know, you're going to roast the baby in the oven. If so, what kind of stuffing are you going to use? What kind of spices are you going to use? You know, maybe you're going to deep fry it. Maybe, you know, are you going to cook it whole, or are you going to chop it up and cook the separate parts in separate ways? There's a lot of factors. It's not like there's just one across the board way of cooking a baby. So, you know, that's really going to be a lot more important to the final taste of the baby than some arbitrary thing like race or gender or something, you know. You know, it's really about preparation methods, and it's all a matter of personal preference. There's no, you know, my personal favorite, you asked, I suppose you say, do you have a favorite type of baby to eat? Yeah, I like roasted baby, I suppose. You know, oven roasted with garlic and rosemary, you know, and basted in hot butter. You know, that's probably the best kind of baby. My mom has a delicious recipe, so yeah, I can share it with you guys if you want. We can do a little Martha Stewart segment where, you know, I prepare the baby and you guys watch and learn. I'm not the best cook, but I think I can mimic the recipe pretty well. It's a pretty easy one. How much longer will you keep making YouTube videos for us? I will keep making YouTube videos as long as it is the best way for me to make videos, and as long as people are interested. You know, if I start getting down to like, you know, 5,000 views a video or some shit, then I'm going to be like, people don't care what I have to say anymore. I'm not going to keep doing this. You know, as long as I have, you know, my videos are averaging like 60 or 70,000 or so, and, you know, every once in a while I get one that, you know, breaks 100,000 or more, then I'll still be making these videos. I'll be like, okay, cool, you know, I still got a pretty sizable active audience, then I'll still be doing it. And, you know, the other factor, I guess, is, you know, what YouTube will allow me to do. If there's a point where YouTube just becomes so restrictive that I don't want to make videos here anymore, like, they're like, you can't cook babies on YouTube anymore, I'll be like, whoa, you know, fuck this. You guys are discriminating against atheists, and I'll leave. I'll be serious about this. What would you rather be, crippled or black? And I know this is designed to be like a stupid, offensive question, but it actually is a real question, and it actually kind of highlights how racist we are. Not necessarily because, you know, oh my god, I'd rather be crippled than black. The reason it does is because I think most white people, when it comes to being asked a question like this, do realize that there's still a lot of racism, and they wouldn't want to be black because they wouldn't want to deal with that racism. They wouldn't want to deal with all of that discrimination, and they wouldn't have to work twice as hard to get the same stuff. I think a lot of white people on an average day just deny that that's the case. Like, oh man, them black people, they're just whining. It's easy for a black man in America. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Making up all this shit about adversity and struggle. Pfft, we got a black president, for fuck's sake. They don't have no struggle. They don't have no adversity. But when it comes to being asked a question like this, I think most white people suddenly say, oh, well, you know, I wouldn't want to be black. That's too hard. That's like playing life on hard mode. Whereas, you know, if you're a cripple, then everyone feels sorry for you. Oh, the poor cripple, cripply, oh, he has a cane, he has to walk with a cane, poor man, he's so very poor, oh. You know, I guess it depends on what kind of handicap we're talking here. I mean, how crippled am I? Am I like in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down? Do I just have a fucking bad leg? I mean, what is this crippling effect? I mean, am I missing a foot? What is it, you know? The good thing about being black, though, is I finally have a giant cock. So I guess I'd be black. You know, even though no one would, well, you know, people would still take me seriously, but it'd be a lot harder to get people to take me seriously, because people would be like, oh, he's just some black guy. And then even when I was smart, they'd just take it as like some novelty, like, oh my god, a smart black dude! What a fucking weird oddity! And they'd parade me around on like Glenn Beck and shit like, a smart black man, behold! Yeah, because that's how racist our society is. Lately, after playing Red Dead Redemption, I've been watching westerns a lot. In fact, I just finished A Few Dollars More about 10 minutes ago. I know from your past videos that you are a bit of a connoisseur and a fan of this particular genre. What others might you recommend? Being from Louisiana... Oh, sorry, that's another question. That's the next question. There's no space between them. Westerns, yeah. Well, my favorite movie is a western. I don't know if you've watched Unforgiven, starring Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, and Gene Hackman. Great film. In fact, obviously my favorite film, so in my opinion, damn near perfect movie. Made in 1992, it won Best Picture. I think it won Best Director, maybe? If it didn't, it should have. So yeah, go see that for sure. If you haven't seen Unforgiven, watch that. If you want more of a pre-spaghetti western, something that's a little bit less bloody and violent and gritty, but still really good, I have two recommendations for you then. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is a terrific movie starring Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne, and it's all about how legends are made and why legends persist. And then there's another great one called Shane, which is a classic western. Maybe it looks a little bit silly today, but it has a great performance in it by Jack Palance, I think his name is. I'm not good with names, but I believe his name is Jack Palance. He's he was a very popular actor for a very long time, and he's excellent in that movie as one of the villains. And I forget who plays the protagonist, but I'm sure it's someone who is equally famous, whose name just slips my mind entirely. Let me just look it up. I got fucking Wikipedia right in front of me. And I know that I probably shouldn't be looking stuff up in the middle of a video because it's like not very riveting entertainment, but honestly, if you're still watching at this point, then you're not looking to be riveted anyway. You're just here for the actual stimulation of hearing someone else's ideas. So you're one of those weird people, one of those oddities out there in the world who actually give a shit about opinions and ideas and thoughts and shit. You're not like the other people who stopped watching a long time ago, who have decided that they're only there for a quick burst of entertainment and then they're on to the next thing. So congratulations for maintaining your attention span in an otherwise inattentive world. So Shane, film, yeah, starring, no one's ever heard of fucking Alan Ladd, so yeah. So never mind, it's no one famous. But yeah, it's a great movie, Shane, in 1953, I think. So, I mean, I just saw that it was 1953, so I don't actually think. I'm just pretending to know by saying I think. It's covering my ass. Maybe it wasn't 1953. Maybe I missaw it. But yeah, 1953, Shane. Good. Watch that shit. Being from Louisiana, has the BP oil spill affected you in any way? Well, yes, it has. It's made seafood a lot less available, obviously. And that sucks because seafood... I don't know if you guys have ever been to Louisiana, but seafood's kind of our thing. We're really into that shit. It's a major part of our economy, and it's really fucking important. So the fact that BP has raped our seafood industry kind of hurts a little bit. But the best thing that it's done is it's shown me the hypocrisy of Southerners. Not that I needed to be shown that again, because it's already pretty evident, but it's one of the best examples of the hypocrisy of Southerners, because these are the same people who say, "Oh, I don't want the government involved in my health care, and I don't want the government giving my welfare to these niggers and Jews and spicks and shit, and I don't fucking like the government getting involved in my business." And then the very second that their own welfare is threatened, the very second that the problem is on them, then they're like, "Oh, why ain't Obama helping us more? Fucking Obama, he don't care about the working man." Yeah, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. You guys didn't want any government intervention in any private matter before. And then the second some corporation shits on you, you're the first to cry about the government not helping you. You fucking pussies. You fucking make me sick. So yeah. On a scale of 1 through 10, how hard do you think you will be laughing when 2012 comes around and the idiots who believed in a new and coming age will realize their prophecy is just another Y2K except with a new chocolate coating? Well, you know what's going to happen on 2012? I actually think the world is going to end. Not because of the Mayan calendar or any of that shit. I think the world is going to end because everyone is going to start laughing at the world not ending, and the laughter is going to be so powerful that it's going to push the Earth out of its orbit and send it careening outside of the Goldilocks zone, where we will either freeze or burn to death, depending on which direction we go. So yeah, I think that my laughter and the laughter of all the other skeptics in the world over 2012 is actually going to lead 2012 to happen. That's, of course, a completely facetious answer, so please don't take it seriously. Do you think that you could ever achieve popularity on YouTube comparable to Ray William Johnson, SXE Phil, etc., despite your philosophical slant? So you're asking me if I think that someone like me, who is a lunatic, who doesn't believe in law and doesn't believe in God and doesn't share the values of 99% of Americans, if I could rise to the top and be the shining star of YouTube, you know what? Stranger shit has happened. But I'm certainly not going to do it by making big, long-ass videos like this. I'd have to make a more concerted effort to increase my popularity. But every time I do that, then my hardcore fans start to whine. And plus, when you try to make videos for the masses, the videos, they're fun. They can be fun. They can be really fun and cool and interesting, like Brick and Beer and... those videos were fun to shoot, and they were fun to do, and they're fun to watch. But if I made shit like that all the time, I would kill myself. I like making stuff like that on occasion. It's really fun. I can't stress to you how much fun it is to do those kind of videos. But it's fulfilling to one part of me and one part of me only. And if I only fed that part of myself on YouTube, then I would be a pretty sad motherfucker indeed. So yeah, I don't know if I could do it. The real question, I guess, is not whether or not I can do it, but whether or not I could do it on my own terms. And I think the answer to that is probably no, but I hope it's yes. I hope that there is this large contingent of people out there who, if they saw my videos, would love them, who just haven't found me yet. They're out there, but they just haven't discovered my videos. They don't know what they're missing. I hope that that's the case. And if you know anyone who is even potentially like that, then for fuck's sake, send them to my channel. Get them to subscribe. Get them watching me. How do you deal with religious family members or close friends? If they talk to you about the Lord Almighty and how things were predicted in the Bible, etc., do you tell them to shut the fuck up, or do you just nod your head and ignore them? Well, it depends on my mood, honestly. You got friends and family. You don't keep your friends and family by being like, your fucking views are stupid. But I don't have any religious friends. Both of my friends, my only two friends in life, Case and Galen, are both atheists, and both really strong atheists. They're not, and they're not just like atheists like, we don't believe in God. They're atheists like, Case is an atheist about everything. He doesn't believe in anything that is the God structure. He doesn't even like secular humanism because he thinks it's too much like religion. And then Galen is he's about the most avowed atheist you could find on the planet. Every once in a while he'll align himself with a religious person to make a point or something, but he's not. He is a pretty fucking strong atheist too. So I don't have any Christian friends, and my family members are not really devoutly religious either. And the ones that are just horrible people, not because they're religious, but because they're just horrible. It's people like. My aunt, whose name I won't say on here, who refused to go to my dad's funeral when she realized it wasn't going to be a religious ceremony. So, fuck her. She can fall off a cliff and die. I don't give a shit. I hope she does. I'm not, obviously I don't fucking hold any animosity towards her to the point where I would do anything myself. Or, I wouldn't even go call her a name or write her a nasty letter. I want nothing to do with her. But if I were to find out that she was dead, I would not care. I would probably be a little bit happy about it because she's such a fucking terrible person. Not that that really has anything to do with the question, but if someone does come to me who I respect and they start talking a bunch of religious garbage, I'm most likely to just say, well, that's what you think. I don't agree, but fine. Believe what you want. Because it's not my business. And I'm not going to sit there and berate them for believing something like that, because then that would be all our relationship consisted of. It's just me going, God is stupid. I make videos on YouTube, and if people choose to click on a video that says God sucks, then that's their decision. They can go click that video, see what they need to see, and move along with their lives. Or choose not to move along with their lives and just criticize me nonstop. But that's their choice to click on God sucks. But I don't go up to Christians and shit in like church and be like, yeah, what is this church shit? What's that cross? Fuck that thing. Fuck your Jesus, you assholes. I know that there's atheists out there that like to do that shit. And I don't really begrudge them it. If that's where they get their jollies, then I certainly don't think that religious people should be exempt from being, sought out and made fun of. But I'm not really into that shit, if someone puts their opinions out there for the public, then I'm willing to be like, yeah, well, you know what, fuck your opinion. But if someone is doing that shit in the privacy of their own home or the privacy of their own church, where they go to their own separate building and talk to their own separate people, and they're not out there trying to do it to the whole world, then I'm not going to fuck with them. But if they come out of that church and they start preaching to people on the sidewalk and trying to convince other people that their religion is right, then that's when they're not out. They haven't crossed some line. They're not outside their right, but they've crossed that line where I'm not going to fuck with them. If someone comes up to me on the street and says, "Hey, have you heard about Jesus?" I'm like, "Get the fuck away from me." I have heard about Jesus, and I think he's an asshole. Do you agree with Howard Bloom or Richard Dawkins in regard to selfish gene theory? Well, remember first that Howard Bloom does not disagree with Richard Dawkins about individual selection. Howard Bloom said that individual selection and group selection are joined at the hip. They are part of the same beast. They both work in tandem. And I agree with him. I agree with that statement. And, if you look at your own biology, we're made of cells, and, the ancestors of your cells were once bitter loners who wanted nothing to do with the other cells on the block. It wasn't until a billion years ago that cells started to get together in these little multicellular organisms, and then a relatively short period of time after that, at least on the geological time scale, 500 million years ago, we had the Cambrian Explosion, and we saw this an explosion, obviously, of new life, of these new, very complicated, multicellular animals for the first time in the history of the world. Before that, it had all been these little fucking cell clusters, and before that it had all been individual little loner cells. So we're basically giant cellular colonies. These cells are all in autonomous organisms, but they all work together to produce this. You know, I think if they knew what they were a part of, they'd probably give up and go back to being individual cells, but, you know, it's too late for them. They're not no longer suited for that lifestyle. So, you know, it's by working in groups that we have multicellular organisms. It's by working in groups that we have things like packs and tribes and herds and colonies, you know. But the real question is, does evolution work like that? You know, of course we all recognize that animals gather into groups, but does that mean that they evolve as groups? Well, to some extent they have to. How can you say that animals don't evolve as groups when they change as groups? You know, if two groups of squirrels are split off by a great divide, you know, and one group of squirrels becomes, you know, these gray tree climbing squirrels, and the other group of squirrels becomes, you know, these flying squirrels that fly from tree to tree with their almost wing-like excess skin. You know, we don't say, you know, that they didn't. These are two groups that evolved into two other groups. This is one group actually that evolved into two new groups. And you know, what about when two lizards do battle over a territory, or two tigers do battle over a territory, and you know, the winning tiger, you know, becomes big and powerful and strong, and the losing tiger with no territory becomes withered and weak. You know, there's something that you know, biological, that changes about a person when they fail at something, and it's the same thing throughout all the animal kingdom. You know, if you go down a rung in society, like if you're this big important billionaire and then suddenly you're this pauper on the side of the street, that is accompanied by depression. Now, depression, you know, we take it for granted that that is the reaction to that particular stimuli, but why should it be? You know, if you're sent spiraling down back, you know, a few rungs on the social hierarchy, then that should be the point where, if you are this being who exists only to support your lineage, to make sure that your genes get passed down, if that is what you really are, then your reaction to being kicked down a few rungs on the social ladder should be to try even harder to get back up. And some people do, but most people wither and die. They wither and die because the group selectionist explanation for why they wither and die is because they don't serve the best interest of the group. They fell down the social ladder for a reason, and now they are committing the human equivalent of cellular apoptosis. Their immune systems are weakened, they become unhealthy. You know, and it's like all these statistics you read about marriage. A person with a mate is happier than a person without a mate, despite any other factors. It doesn't matter if you know, we're talking about a single person who is rich and powerful is likely to be less happy than a married person in a failing and horrible relationship, because we are happier with a mate. If we don't have that, we start to implode. If we're selfish gene machines, then the reaction to not having a mate should be to try as hard as you possibly can to get one. But that's not the reaction. The reaction is to become super introspective, to become completely withdrawn, to become completely forlorn, and to spurn the affection of others. Why do we behave in this fashion? The reason is because we are sacrificing ourselves. We are saying that the genes we contain are a dead end for the species, and we're not going to go forward anymore. Now, of course, we don't say any of that consciously, but that's what's going on. In evolutionary, from an evolutionary perspective, and if the individual selectionists are going to say that there is no such thing as group selection, then they have to come up with a good alternative reason for this self-destruction that every animal on the planet endures in the face of failure. Why? What purpose does this depression and self-destruction that we all feel in the face of personal failure, how does that work in selfish gene theory? How, if every organism is just trying to pass its genes on to the next generation, then why would they adopt this strategy that basically leads them to pick themselves off? That basically leads them to strengthen the whole by sacrificing themselves? That's a question that individual selectionists have to answer if they're going to successfully refute group selection. Now, of course, there's other questions they need to answer, but that's the one that's most interesting to me. And I have a text message, so hold on. God damn it, Ollie, you know I'm making a video. Do you believe that the human race is under chemical attack right now by the global elite in order to reduce the world's alleged overpopulation problem? Well, if it is, then the global elite are doing a piss-poor job at it. They haven't done a very good job of chemically controlling the population, if that's indeed what they're doing, because birth rates are still really, God damn it, really fucking high. They're still extraordinarily high. The populations aren't going anywhere but up in most countries. The countries that are an exception to that, like Japan, where the population is going down, those countries are not losing population because of unsuccessful reproduction. They're losing population because they're not attempting as much reproduction. They're not having as much sex, and when they are having sex, they're taking a lot more precautions to not have children because they're the society of very career-oriented people for the most part, and they don't want a lot of children. So that's why their population is shrinking, and that's why the white population in America is shrinking, or at least not growing as fast as other populations, because we're using more birth control, and less and less people actually want to have children. So it's nothing to do with chemicals, except for the ones that are naturally in our brains. What are your opinion? Okay. On the way we use violence and death as entertainment nowadays. Example, movies where they blow up a family just to see a man go on a rampage for revenge and killing more people. Now, I don't want to give a very detailed answer to this question, but I'm just going to ask you to go read some Shakespeare and see if you think that this is a modern phenomena afterwards. Violence has always been a part of our entertainment. Always. Even if you go back to listening to Homer's Iliad or the Odyssey, it's chock full of violence and death and war. Violence is not some new thing that we came up with and decided, whoa, we're going to have people shooting each other and killing each other in the field of battle, and we're going to have, tales of bloody revenge. I mean, look at the Bible, for fuck's sake. The first chapters of the Bible, after you get past all that creation shit, it's a guy killing his own fucking brother, bashing his head in with a rock, and then saying, I didn't do it. That's the Bible. This is a story that's probably more than 5,000 fucking years old, the story of Cain and Abel. And it's also a story that was repeated in the fable about Romulus and Remus, where Romulus bashes his fucking brother's head in. So these stories of violence and betrayal and death and murder and carnage and blood are nothing new. Nothing even remotely new. I know that it can be kind of confusing because, you look back at the old movies of the 1950s and you don't see a lot of that shit, but you have to remember that was a lame-ass era full of lame-ass people who had just gotten out of World War II, and the last thing they wanted to see was more violence. They're like, oh god, we want to live in a fantasy world of Leave It to Beaver and shit. It wasn't until, and then you went through that stupid peace and love shit of the 60s, and it wasn't until the 70s that we started to see violence emerge again in entertainment. But if you look at movies from the 1920s and 30s and 40s, there's a lot of violence. Because, we liked violence at that point. It was good entertainment. But after World War II happened, it's kind of made the violence not appealing anymore. For a while. For a very brief little while. That little window of maybe 20 years where violence wasn't in vogue so much. At least in cinemas. I have always wanted to watch your man-only videos, but you expressly forbid it. Will you make an exception for lesbians? You know what? If you're a woman who is so stupid that she actually takes that no women allowed joke seriously, then I don't want you watching my videos. So, be gone. Will rampant cat fetishists lead to the Armageddon? If so, how? I took this question just so I could see if I could make this narrative leap from rampant cat fetishist to Armageddon. So here I go, and I have not practiced this or rehearsed this at all. So if it's shit, then that's why. Okay, so rampant cat fetishist. This group of people emerges in the future. Let's say 2020 or 2030. And they like to fuck cats. But the cats are none too compliant because they're cats. A cat doesn't want a big dick in its ass or its vagina or whatever the fucking cat has. So the cats, they naturally scratch the hell out of these guys. Just brutally scratching, violent cats. So the solution that the cat fetishists come up with is that they're going to breed a far tamer version of the house cat. They're going to selectively breed out the violence and aggression of cats and make cats these lovable, playful creatures that would never dream of scratching you in 1,000 years or biting you or anything like that. They will sit there and take a human-sized phallus inside of them with no complaint. The problem is that once they made these super docile cats, the mouse population started to skyrocket because the cats no longer had the killer instinct to chase the mice. And the mice began to carry a new plague that started killing people off in horrendous numbers. And people started trying to control the mouse population themselves and, working out these poisons that kill the mice. The problem was that the poisons also killed squirrels and deer and other animals. They would leak into the water system and they would poison plants and kill game and livestock. And so eventually, we have these mass extinctions of animals where we have no deer to hunt and we have none of these other animals to hunt or to preserve the ecosystems, and this takes an unimaginable toll on the ecosystems of the earth. And one extinction leads to another, as these animals, like let's say you have certain birds that feed on the fish, and the fish are getting killed by the runoff of this toxic chemical. So now the birds can't eat the fish, so the birds die out. And then that bird was eaten by another kind of bird, and then that bird dies out. And then, before we know it, the only animals that we have on Earth are animals like, pigs and chickens and cows who are all raised as livestock, and people are still dying of this mysterious plague that was being carried by the rats, who the cats no longer, hunt. So, this of course leads to massive social hysteria and unrest, And people start blaming everyone, from the Jews to the blacks to the whites to the Mexicans, leading to a third world war in which, nuclear devices are used and countless people die, and eventually, the world population has dwindled to the point where there are less than 100 million people left on the planet, and technology is scarce, and they basically live in nomadic tribes of hunters and gatherers again. And basically we're back to square one evolutionarily. It's kind of like this crazy Mad Max style world. So, yeah, cat fetishists will lead to Armageddon. How do you feel about Catholics like me who aren't sociopathic, murderous boy fiddlers? Well, what's the point of being Catholic then? That's like becoming Mormon and not wearing the special underwear, or becoming a Jehovah's Witness but not pestering the hell out of people. You're giving up the perks of your religion. Why be Catholic if you're not going to be a sociopathic, murderous boy fiddler? It seems to me like you should just be an atheist. That way you can eat children instead of molesting them. Would you say it's morally correct to torture a child if it were to save the lives of several adults? Of course, I know this situation would never arise, but oh well. Actually, you're sadly mistaken. The situation has arisen, and it arose in the case of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the architects of the 9/11 attacks on America, unless you're a conspiracy theorist idiot and then, you don't believe that, whatever. But, his children, who I believe were 6 and 8 years old at the time, were tortured by the U.S. military. Basically, ants and other bugs were allowed to crawl all over the children's skin in the hopes that they would divulge where their father was hiding. So, we have tortured children, and, it has been in these life or death situations where, if we don't catch this guy, more people will die, so it's okay to torture his children. Now, of course, it's never been confirmed that we did this, but we did. If you look at the facts, it seems pretty obvious that we did do it. Especially since details of their torture later corresponded to torture techniques that, we confirmed the use of only after we heard these stories. So it seems likely that this happened. Is it morally right, though? That's the question. Well, as you know, I don't believe in objective morality, so I can't say it was objectively wrong. But is it against my morality to torture a child is simply to garner some information that you believe will save some adults, or maybe even some other children? I don't think it's right to torture anyone for any reason, but, sometimes you're put in a situation where it seems like it's the only way, and if your job is to preserve the lives of one group of people, then you'll do the torture. You'll take that guy, you'll take a guy's balls and beat them with a hammer if you think that's what it takes to save the group of people that you're there to save. I think to say it's morally right is kind of a stretch. But I think that, if you have any sort of practical morality, then you're going to have to realize that there are going to be situations where you're going to make an exception to your own morality and say, this is wrong, but it's less wrong than the alternative. And sometimes you'll be mistaken, and other times you won't be mistaken, but you won't know what those are, because, as I said before, there is no objective morality. And it's all very dirty, and there's no way of knowing what's what. We live in a world that's just an infinite shade of gray. Despite your critiques of feminism, do you still identify as a feminist? If not, what do you identify as, if anything, in regard to equality? I would identify as a a believer in human equality. I think that women are equal to men. I think that men are equal to men of another race. You know, white men are the same as black men, are the same as Latino women, are the same as Eskimo children, whatever. Everyone's equal. At least they should be treated equally in terms of their social rights and privileges and so on and so forth. Now, if you ask me if people are genuinely equal, if you know, one man and another man can be measured as exactly the same, I think that's wrong. You know, I don't think that some, you know, psychopathic raving bum off the street is worth as much as a scientist researching a cure to cancer, or even something less important than that. I don't think that, but I think that they should be treated the same. I think that it doesn't make sense to introduce bias into a system of order. You know, so I think everyone should be treated the same, even if they're not. But I do believe that from group to group, people are essentially the same. How does it feel to be ruled by less intelligent beings? Well, that's really the big question that faces people of intelligence now, isn't it? How do we wrestle power away from stupid people? How does the intelligent minority gain power over the stupid majority? Or even if we don't want to have power over the stupid majority, how do we gain the power to live our lives as we see fit and to stop being beholden to these rules that are made by people who we don't like or agree with? And I think the answer to that is to go back to one of my earlier answers and to just say that we need to get rid of rules. If no one is making rules, then no one can make rules against another group of people. You know, and if you want rules within your own little group, within your own little clique, then fine, make yourself some fucking rules. Go hog wild. Live your life by the 10 Commandments. But don't make anyone else live by the 10 Commandments. If I say fuck the 10 Commandments, then let me say fuck the 10 Commandments and let me go about my fucking business, because I never consented to your stupid fucking rules. Yeah, so I think the best way to gain power over stupidity is to get rid of any sort of central power altogether. Do you think that the current age of mediocrity is going to continue degenerating endlessly, or do you think that eventually things will turn around substantially and intellectual, artistic music, movies, television, etc. will thrive in the mainstream media again? If so, do you think this Renaissance-like age will be within our lifetimes or far in the future? Well, let's look at these mediums individually for a second. Now, music has definitely taken a nosedive. It's in decline. Music today is such garbage that even the kids today don't fucking like it. I ask teenagers, 15-year-old kids, what kind of music they like, and they list bands that I was listening to when I was their age. Why should these kids be living a dead culture? Why are they looking back to a moment that's no longer vital? I'm not saying that, you shouldn't like things that are before your time, but that shouldn't be the majority of what you like. You should have your own voice. You should have your own interests reflected in popular culture. And it's obvious that popular culture right now, at least in terms of music, is not responding to the people. And that's fucking sad. It's sad that there's going to be an entire group of kids who grow up with music that they fucking have no connection to. That's wrong. It's just fucking disgusting to me. But let's talk about movies. Movies are way better now than they were in the past. And I know that you don't believe me because you'll think, oh, what about all those classics? Yeah, those were the classics. They survived for a reason. But if you look at the vast majority of movies that were released the same year as those classics, they were fucking awful. A lot of old movies are really fucking bad. They're really just, they're shit. And they're not shit because they're genuinely shit. They're shit because they were trying to do things that they just couldn't do. You know, you think there are movies, you think there's movies now with bad characters and bad plot, and the only thing they have is good special effects? Well, welcome to 1950-fucking-5, when they had movies with bad characters, bad plot, and bad fucking special effects. These movies, I mean, there was like, you know, watch some schlocky 50s horror movies and compare them with our horror movies today. They were fucking garbage back then. It was like, you know, attack of a big, stupid, foam rubber ant. Like, who gives a fuck? Our horror movies now are like people getting fucking decapitated and fucking people getting their fucking mouths sewn to other people's assholes in this giant human centipede thing by a crazy German scientist. I mean, it's a stupid fucking plot for a movie, but it's a fuck of a lot better than, hey, a giant praying mantis! No! Yeah, movies are better now. They really are. You know, and I'm not saying that every movie that comes out is a gem. I'm saying that, you know, there's always been good movies and bad movies, but even the bad movies now are better than they were in the past, because at least they're more competently made, they have better special effects, they take advantage of new technologies. So yeah, movies are better. Now let's ask ourselves about television here. I mean, like, television, there was no great golden era where television was fucking amazing. If there is, we're living in it. This is the age of complex narratives and interesting characters, like shows like House and Dexter, and there's astute social commentary in shows like South Park, and then there's this like absurdist off-the-wall humor with stuff like Family Guy, and then there's like biting social commentary, you know, in like, well, not in, you know, like the older episodes of The Simpsons, obviously not, you know, today, but, you know, at one point, you know, and there's some great shit on TV right now, and there's also a lot of garbage, but if you look in the past, I mean, look at shit like The Andy Griffith Show, or Three's Company, or Saved by the Bell. It's all fucking, it's shit. It's garbage. Even if you look at the shows that were considered good back then, like stuff like Dragnet or something, you know, I mean, it's okay, but the shit we watch today is way fucking better. It's way more complex. It's way more subtle. So I think that in terms of TV and movies, we're fucking heads, we're fucking leagues above the shit we were watching in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s or the 50s. That has improved, but I agree with you on music. Music is garbage today. We really need to change that. Why do you refuse to talk about 9/11 conspiracy theory when so much fact is there to show a conspiracy? I love all that you talk about. I agree with you on most points except this one. And it really niggles me to why you would think this is a legitimate terrorist attack. Okay, let me just ask you to do this. Go watch the makers of Loose Change debate with the editors of Popular Mechanics. It's right here on YouTube. You can go watch it. And if after watching that you still believe that there is a 9/11 conspiracy theory, then you are a moron. And you should unsubscribe from me right now. Because you're just not able to think in the proper manner. So yeah. Just go watch that. Now, TJ, you're clearly not a religious person, but would you consider yourself to be a spiritual one? I myself am a devout atheist, but I do occasionally enjoy brief moments of spirituality.
Virus database.
Damn it. Fuck your virus database, you stupid cunt. I myself am a devout atheist, but I do occasionally enjoy brief moments of spirituality, insight, contemplation, that sort of thing. I guess my question really is, do you think being an atheist means that you can apply to situations is logic and nothing else? All you can apply to logic to situations is logic and nothing else. No, that doesn't. You know, spirituality has nothing to do with spirits. It's a misnomer. Spirituality has to do with an inner feeling, and it arises not from some outside source. It's from you. It's within you. It's something that speaks to you. If you're listening to a powerful piece of music and you feel that shiver running down your spine and you feel this sudden oneness with everything around you, that's coming from you. That is your God. It's in here and in here. It's not out there. You have to understand that. You know, you are capable of finding these feelings within yourself. You don't have to seek out some alternate explanation, some crazy theory about a man who lives in the sky and controls your destiny. It's in you. It's in your psychology, and it's completely naturalistic. TJ, your view about radical vegetarians that randomly yell murder at everyone who dares to taste meat. My opinion of those people is that they are assholes. You know, anyone who goes around forcing their view down someone else's throat is an asshole, obviously. Why would you like a person like that? Why would you trust a person like that? Who could say anything nice about a person like Onision, who goes around talking about, if you eat meat, you're a fucking murderer. You're a piece of goddamn shit, because a cow is the same thing as a person. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's a big, dumb, lumbering sack of stupidity. It doesn't have two fucking brain cells to rub together. It's a big sack of meat, and it deserves to be eaten. And you can talk about, it has feelings. Yeah, okay, fine. It has a nervous system. Maybe it feels some rudimentary emotions, but it doesn't have feelings because it doesn't have an intellect. It doesn't have a consciousness. It doesn't have a consciousness like you and I have it. You know, I know that in the world of Disney and Pixar and shit, a cow can talk and it has feelings and it makes pop culture references, but that's a fucking cartoon. A real life cow is a dumb fucking beast. It doesn't have an intellect. It doesn't sit there contemplating its situation or wonder, I wonder what the meaning of life is. It doesn't care. It's a fucking cow. All it thinks is, I'm going to eat this grass. I'm going to take a shit. I'm going to drink some milk. That's it. What do you think about Israel? And of course this question is probably prompted by the recent controversy where some Israeli special ops, for some reason, boarded some ships in this flotilla that was bringing aid to Palestine, and they shot some people. And then Israel afterwards showed, oh, they had weapons, and then they showed these primitive weapons, like some sticks and a few haphazard guns here and there. Yeah, they were trying to bring that to Palestine, because if the Palestinians had got a hold of these weapons, they'd have fucking conquered Israel, in a week. Oh shit, the Palestinians have a shotgun. No, yeah, whatever, Israel is a nation of civilized people who have become monsters because they've become convinced that they're fighting monsters. If you convince yourself that you're fighting monsters, you will do anything, because you're engaging in what scientists, these cultural anthropologists, call pseudo-speciation, wherein you make your enemy inhuman, and because your enemy is inhuman, you can treat them inhumanely, and that is what Israel has done. And I'm not saying that Israel are inhuman. I think they are very human, and I think that the citizens of Israel are just as viable as people as anyone else in the world, and I think that the people of Palestine are too. I don't think there's any real difference between these two cultures other than the fact that their cultures are different, which is not significant. I know that that sounds like a stupid statement, but it's really not, because culture is just programming. You have two of the same computers. They're just using different operating systems. One is using operating system Muslim 1.0, and the other is using operating system Zionist 3.0. So, there's discrepancies and there's differing values, but really it's the same fucking hardware. It's the same machine. And if you switched the machines and you put Muslim 3.0 and you put if you put Zionist 3.0 on the machine that's currently running Muslim 1.0 and vice versa, it would take. You know, this cultural difference is not something insurmountable. It all has to do with programming. And programming can be changed. Maybe not easily sometimes, but it can be changed. They're both identical in terms of their biology. They're both human beings. They're both born with the same kinds of brains and the same kinds of bodies, with a few minor physical differences here and there, but nothing that would keep them from a lasting peace, if not for the fact that they're running these very, very different operating systems. What is your honest opinion of Thunderfoot? Well, you know, I don't know Thunderfoot. I really don't know the guy. He seems like a bit of an asshole to me, though. A bit of a pompous douchebag. And I know that there are people out there that call me pompous, and probably some of them are correct, at least to an extent. But Thunderfoot, he said something along the lines of he was talking to someone who shunned the American education system, which is a noble act that should always be applauded. And he took this person on and he said to him, "Oh, I could do a physics problem in 15 minutes. You couldn't do it in 15 months." And I'm like, what are you talking about, Thunderfoot? What does it fucking matter about what is this shit with the physics problem? A physics problem? I mean, like, you know, you're not special because you can do a physics problem. That's a skill. That's a specialization. That's like saying that someone who knows karate is better than you because they can kick your ass. You're not better than someone because you can do a fucking physics problem. Now, if you could do a physics problem that no one else on Earth could do, then I'd be like, wow, Thunderfoot, you're amazing. Or you came up with a physics problem that changed the world, and you had a solution. I'd be, Thunderfoot, you're an amazing man. You are an amazing person. But just to do a physics problem in 15 minutes that so can fucking 2 million other people, that's not a big fucking deal. That doesn't make you better than someone else. How do you not see that? How are you so arrogant that you don't see that? It's a skill. It's a specialization. It's something that you learned. Maybe you had some natural talent for it. I'm sure you did, because that's what you chose to do with your life. But that doesn't make you better. That doesn't put you above someone else on this rung of intelligence just because you can do something well. You know, if you make a lasting and real contribution to the world, then fine. You know, you can have some superiority. But until you've done that, shut the fuck up. You're not better than anyone else, and neither am I. You know, you have a skill set, and so does your neighbor, and so does your neighbor's fucking neighbor, and so does your neighbor's neighbor's neighbor, and so does the guy who lives 50 blocks away from you, and so does the person who's fucking eating out of the garbage can outside of the fucking McDonald's. He has a skill set that enables him to survive without a home or a car or with a steady stream of income. Everyone has a skill set. Okay? If you want to make this argument that you're inherently better than everyone else, then you would better have a skill set that includes the ability to do some stuff that most people could not do under any circumstances. You better have a skill set that enables you to make significant changes to the world. But we both know that people like that are rare. There are a handful of them every generation, at best. So, until you're one of those people, stop acting so smug and superior. That's my problem with Thunderfoot. How would you stop the Gulf oil leak? If I knew how to do this, I would be rich. But, I have got to say, though, that it's pretty depressing how limited and weak our solutions are for this problem. Let's try to plug the hole up with this. Nope, didn't work. Let's try to plug the hole up with this. Nope, didn't work. Is that the only thing we can do? Just plug up the hole? I mean, there's nothing else? That's all that can be done is just plugging up this hole? There's no alternative method? If that's the case, then why are we doing all this offshore deep-sea drilling shit? If there's no way to stop one of these things when they leak, then we shouldn't be fucking doing this. At all. We should be looking for alternative means of fueling our vehicles and alternative means of making materials like plastics. We need to find alternatives to the energy problems that are facing the nation. We don't need to be doing things that cause irreparable damage to the environment and irreparable damage to things like the fishing industry, which here has taken a nosedive. There are plenty of fishermen that are just out of work, and they're none too happy about it. Why don't you go on the Scientology raids? Because if I went on the Scientology raids, it would be a tacit admission that Scientology is the thing we need to worry about, which it's not. Scientology is this obscure, small, crazy religion in a country that is full of gigantic, crazy religions. You know, if 4chan decides that they're going to go after the Catholic Church, or they're going to go after the Southern Baptists, or they're just going to go after Christianity in general, then count me in. I'll fucking put on a fucking V for Vendetta mask, and I'll go on their little raids. But until that day, count me out. As long as you're singling out one crazy religion and saying, you guys are crazy, and, you know, all this other stuff is fine, then I don't want anything to do with it. Do you think Jesus was an actual historical figure? I do think Jesus was an actual historical figure, and there's a few reasons why. Actually, only two reasons why I think he was probably an actual historical figure, and these are not reasons that are, you know, by any means compelling to a 100% verdict. This is just stuff that I think suggests that he was a historical figure. The first thing is that he was a man who lived out his life in Nazareth. He was called Jesus of Nazareth, which means Jesus from Nazareth. And yet he was born in Bethlehem, according to legend. So the reason he was born in Bethlehem is because he needed to be born in Bethlehem to fulfill the prophecies about the Messiah. So if you have this guy who's Jesus of Nazareth, which means Jesus from Nazareth, that means he was probably born in Nazareth. But he can't be born in Nazareth. He has to be born in Bethlehem. So how do you fix this problem? You tell this big elaborate story about how his family was traveling, and there was a big storm, and they were trying to find shelter for the night, and his wife was pregnant, and yet he was still carrying her on a donkey and shit. But somehow they found Bethlehem, and Jesus was born in Bethlehem. That's the only night he ever spent in Bethlehem, was the night he was born there. Seems kind of unlikely. I mean, it seems kind of unlikely to me that if you're going to make up a story about a Messiah, you would have him be born in Bethlehem and then leave immediately and be raised somewhere else and called something else. It seems to me that if you're going to tell the story of Jesus and the prophecy, you're going to have him be born in Bethlehem and live out his life in Bethlehem, or at least live out some of his life in Bethlehem, so that he's Jesus of Bethlehem, not Jesus of Nazareth. So the fact that there was a guy who was called Jesus of Nazareth, and yet had this very convoluted story about why he was born in Bethlehem, leads me to believe that it was a real person. The other thing that leads me to believe it was a real person is the crucifixion. Because, why would you have your Savior be crucified as a criminal? There was nothing about that in the prophecies, nothing about Jesus being crucified. There was nothing about the Messiah being crucified at all. The Messiah was supposed to lead people to freedom and all that. And, you know, the fact that he was crucified means that if it's a fictional story, then the followers of Jesus intentionally made their Messiah a criminal element. Now, that's not impossible that they would have done that. I mean, we certainly still have outlaw worship today, but it seems unlikely that if they're trying to portray this man as like this just and great figure, they wouldn't have him be crucified. They would have him die a far more, you know, noble death. What they did was they just made it to where he, you know, it was unjustly crucified, and they turned it into this big ordeal. But the likelihood, it seems to me, is there was this guy who was crucified for being a criminal, who knows what he actually did, and they had to surmount that somehow. They had to spin it to make it seem as though, oh, you know, yeah, but, you know, you got to take this into account, and the people who crucified him were monsters, and he chose to be crucified. He could have got out of it, but he chose to suffer for all of our sins, you know. That's a good angle. So it seems to me that there probably was a person who acted as a template for this story, but, I mean, you know, by no means is that certain. It's just some evidence that I think suggests that. Is Justin Bieber male or female? You know, I don't know what Justin Bieber is. I don't know if he's male or female, but I do know that he needs dick. If you got a big dick and you find yourself attracted to Justin Bieber, then I think you should give it to him. 'Cause he needs it. He really needs it. Is there an explanation for free will? It seems to me that everything in this universe is controlled by chemical reactions, so why should we humans be any different? It seems that our brains are merely chemical machines that are reacting to outside stimuli, and that our perceived control over it is just that, perceived. If there is no God, which seems to be the case, there seems to be nothing to interface with our chemicals must then be the gods of us. Yes. And I only brought up your question to reiterate points that I made before in this video. Yes, absolutely. God lives here, God lives here. And the thing about morality, it's all bullshit. All the stuff that you're told needs to control you, it doesn't need to control you. You are your own God. Why do your fans insist on defending you as though you're some kind of atheist god? They're not. If it makes you feel any better, they're not defending me. They don't give a shit about me. At least not you know, in any real sense of the word. About, you know, they don't care about my person. They're defending me because I represent them. And I'm not saying that I absolutely represent all of the views of all of the people who listen to my videos, but I am saying that they see something of themselves in me, in the things that I say. They see their own ideas reflected in some way. They see their own sentiments reflected in some way. Maybe, so when they're defending my videos and my thoughts and my feelings, they're really not defending me. They're defending a piece of themselves. They're defending the part of them that feels the same way that I do. So it has nothing to do really with me as a person. It has everything to do with them as a person, because that's what's going on there. How should the supporters proceed to eventually get the full legalization of marijuana? That's very interesting. I think the answer is nonviolent resistance. You know, you don't get marijuana legalized by begging for marijuana to be legalized. If you really want marijuana legalized, then march on Washington and light up. You know, get a bunch of people together and get them all to go smoke a big fat fucking joint sitting on the steps of Capitol Hill. You know, disrupt Congress, disrupt the fucking lives of the president, get the police to arrest, 20,000 people over smoking some weed. You know, that's how you do it. I mean, the blacks didn't just, they boycotted bus lines. They went into fucking white establishments and sat down like they owned the fucking place. And just took the consequences of that. They got their fucking faces pounded in every once in a while. But that was the price of gaining the freedom that they wanted, that they needed, that what they deserved and was rightfully theirs. And, you know, these people who want marijuana legalized are going to have to do the same fucking thing. That's how you win victory in this country. You stand up for yourself and you take the fucking consequences. If you really desperately want marijuana to be legalized, and that's what you believe in with your whole heart and whole soul, then you need to stand up for that. You need to get arrested for it. And, you know, not just you as an individual when you get caught, but you need to stand up and say, I'm smoking weed, arrest me, put me in jail, show the world what you're about. Show them how my harmless habit is something that you're willing to put me in jail for. You know, because it doesn't make the news when one of you do it, but it makes the news when 20,000 people or 30,000 people or 50,000 people march on Washington, D.C. and light up. Then it becomes something. Then, you know, they have to figure out, how do we handle this? Do we arrest them all? Do we try to disperse them? Do we allow them to do this and say that it's their free speech right, but say that, you know, the law is not going to change or whatever? What do? You make them make that decision. You bring the battle to them. And you let it be weighed out in the court of public opinion. And, you know, maybe there'll be some people who say, fuck those fucking weed-smoking hippies. But a lot of other people are going to say, you know what, I fucking support those guys. Maybe people who don't even agree with you will support you just because you have the balls to actually stand up for what you fucking believe in. So that's how you do it. If you care. If you're really willing to do it. I mean, and it also would show people that weed smokers can be motivated to do something like that. You know, because right now the fucking depiction of people who smoke weed in the mainstream media is kind of like, man, cups are weird. Yeah, so, what do you think of the YouTube scientists, aka Thunderfoot and Oh My God It's Chris, etc., who make scientific claims with a somewhat skewed viewpoint for their own beliefs and preferences? Despite me agreeing with most of what they say, do you think they demean education or knowledge of science and other subjects they bring up? Do you think you do? Or do you consider yourself an entertainer over an educator? Well, you know what? I don't think that they do that. I don't think for a second that there's anything wrong with Thunderfoot saying, you're wrong and here's a physics equation to show why. Because otherwise, what the fuck's use is science? If we're not going to use it to bolster anything we believe in, then what the fuck is it there for? If we're not going to try to base our opinions off it and support our ideas with it, then we might as well not have it. We might as well just be fucking cavemen. You know, it's okay to do that. I don't understand this idea that says, oh no, science is this cold, sterile, untouchable thing that we can't fucking attach any personal beliefs or opinions to. You can do that. You just can't say that your own personal beliefs usurp science. You can't say, oh, well, you know, I don't like fucking, I don't like physics, so I'm going to throw this physics book into the trash and just say that magic is what fuels the world. You know, you can't do that. But if you have some idea that is that you can find support for scientifically, even if it's a more obscure scientific idea, and you want to make that case and see who agrees with you, then that's your fucking right. And anyone who says that you can't do that or that you shouldn't do that is an asshole. I've noticed that you have some Marilyn Manson images on the wall behind you in your videos, yet from your videos I have seen you have never addressed him. What are your thoughts on Marilyn Manson? Well, obviously I wouldn't put him on my wall if I didn't have a fairly high opinion. I think Manson's a badass motherfucker. I love his music, I love his image, I love his earlier music videos, although the latter ones are kind of lacking, in my opinion. But I fucking love the guy. I love his lyrics, I love his thoughts and his feelings and everything about him. I can't really say much negative about Marilyn Manson at all. So, yeah, I just want to make it clear that I am a huge Manson fan, for anyone who didn't know that or is curious as to why he's on my wall. What do you think of circumcision? Well, you know, it's fucking weird to me that you get a group of Americans together and you show them female genital mutilation. You know, which is just, I mean, it's female circumcision. It's the same fucking practice. It's not any worse. It's basically removing the parts of the vagina that would cause women to experience pleasure during sex, which is the reason why we started removing foreskins. Because if you watch the episode of Penn and Teller's Bullshit on circumcisions, you find out that it's all something that was basically conceived of by the old Puritans who didn't want little boys touching themselves because that's sinful. So most of the nerves in your penis are in the foreskin if you have one. So that's where the majority of sexual pleasure is coming from right there. When you're fucking and you think to yourself, man, this feels good, most of that's coming from your foreskin. But if you don't have a foreskin, then most of your pleasure is gone. And what pleasure you do have left is coming from the actual climax, and you don't really experience much pleasure in the actual act of having sex. And what you do is mostly just the psychological pleasure that you've been taught to experience, through years of evolution, where it's in evolution's best interest to make sex pleasurable. And even if we alter our equipment, we're still going to get that little emotional high, like, yes, I am dominating, I have spread my seed, I am awesome. Yeah. So I think it's weird that we call it genital mutilation when third worlders do it to their kids, but over here it's just circumcision, and it's a safe medical practice that we all agree is okay. I don't agree that it's okay. I think it's wrong, and it should not be a common practice, it shouldn't be a practice at all. Obviously I don't support laws against it, because I just don't support laws in general, but it should be discouraged as strongly as possible by the court of public opinion. So yeah, people's minds really need to be turned around about that. What are your thoughts on Mannix the Pirate's disapproval of Draw Muhammad Day, and do you believe that events such as Draw Muhammad Day can actually spur social change, or is it more preaching to the choir? Well, the reason that people anytime there's some cultural issue like this, some event that's like drawing the line in the sand, like, whose side are you on? There's always going to be people who stake out their identity by being for it, and there's always going to be people who stake out their identity by being against it. But there's always going to be people on both sides. And in this instance, it's people like Dawa Films, who is a Muslim, who was in favor of the day, and it's going to be people like Mannix the Pirate, who is an atheist, who is against the day, who go against their own sides because they want this basically this sense of rebellion against themselves. They want to stand against their own perceived beliefs and challenge the public notion of who they are by saying, oh, you think I would be on this side, but actually I have some obscure, vague reason for being on this side. Ha! That'll show you to put me in a box. So really, what Mannix did is just an identity tool. It's his way of saying that you can't count on me to be this two-dimensional character that you think I am. So that's why he did what he did. It had nothing to do with Draw Muhammad Day and everything to do with Mannix the Pirate asserting that he's not who you think he is. Because he's probably very scared that he is who you think he is. Now, does Draw Muhammad Day spur social change? Well, an entire country thought it was so offensive that they had to block Facebook, the most popular social network on the internet, so it obviously has some impact. Is it negative or positive? Who knows? And really, who gives a fuck? It's not about bringing about some positive social change. It's about saying fuck you to people who are trying to censor you. To people, if a group of people comes to you and says, don't do this, you do it just to spite those motherfuckers. Just to say, you know what, fuck you, I'm going to do it anyway. The consequences be damned. Because I'm not going to take that shit off of you. And all these little whiny faggots out there who just complain like, oh, you're just going to make the Muslims mad. Good! Good! Let them be angry! Let them rage and rant and be psychotic assholes because we drew a picture. Let it happen. Let it be. You know what? Because it's a fucking expression of freedom of speech. And it's more importantly, it's a big middle finger in the face of those who would censor us. It's a big middle finger in the people who try to impose their will on us when they have no right to do so. When we have not consented to their forcing themselves, inserting themselves into our lives. It's our way of saying, fuck you. And that is an act of integrity. It's an act of integrity when people try to tell you what to do it anyway. To do it against their will. It is an act of cowardice to say, oh, well, if the Muslims don't want us to draw Muhammad, then I guess we won't. Why? Why would you let them control you? It's bullshit. So, Draw Muhammad Day was a great fucking idea, and it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, because it was actually some people standing up for themselves against assholes. Who is your favorite atheist writer and why? And do you think eventually religion will die, or do you believe it will be around for all of existence? I think my favorite atheist writer was a man who didn't really submit most of. He never wrote a book that was exclusively about atheism, and his primary method of delivering his writings was not actually in book form, although he did release several books. And that man is George Carlin. I think that if you're going to ask me who is the most important atheist thinker in my life, I maybe part of me wishes I could say someone stuffy like Richard Dawkins, or someone very, very cerebral like Sam Harris, or someone, very aggressive well, obviously, George Carlin was pretty fucking aggressive, so I guess Hitchens would be in the same vein as him. But, George Carlin is the best. Hands down. Any great ivory tower intellectual type can tell you all the stuff wrong with religion, but only George Carlin could tell it to you in such a way that it just made you see the absurdity with such clarity. It wasn't a man. He wasn't doing it with science, for the most part. He wasn't doing it with these big, lofty concepts, and he wasn't, beating religion over the head and saying, he was just like casually, dismissively destroying religion, just disassembling it and showing you its guts and saying, yeah, here's what you believe. It's bullshit. You're wrong. There is no up there. There is no down there. It's all bullshit, folks, and it's bad for you. That's all George had to say. And you knew he was right. Would you agree that all states essentially act as a coercive, death threat-based institution? Well, let me answer that by asking the audience a question. If you want to defy the state and live your life by your own standards, according to your own will, what happens to you? If you decide that you want to smoke weed because you like it, and you don't want to have just one wife, you want to have 7. Not for some stupid religious reasons, but just because you really like new pussy and you want a girl to fuck every day of the week. Let's say that you want to, you don't want to pay taxes. You want to live in a shack in the middle of the woods and just live off the land. What happens to you? They come and arrest you. They put you in jail. So, of course, it's a system of coercion. Of course it's a system of terror. You can't do anything that you want to do unless they approve of it. So how can you say that it's anything but a system of coercion? How big are your feet? I know that's a weird one, but you showed your shoes in a video and they were huge. I wear a size 15 shoe. I don't know if you can see that or not. Size 15. These shoes are actually too small. Most size 15s I can't even fit in. These are too small. I actually fit a lot better in size 16, but they're really hard to find, and when you do, they usually look absolutely goofy. So I usually end up wearing size 15s, which make my feet hurt, but at least I don't look like a dumbass. At least not any more like a dumbass than I already do. Do you honestly believe we will one day colonize other planets? You know, I don't know if I believe that we will, but I certainly believe that we should. Here's why. Because the universe is a big place. It's really fucking big. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but this little speck of the universe that we live in is really fucking small. It's like this little, like this screen here, you know, like this whole image that you're seeing of me talking, a single pixel of this image is way, 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 way bigger in comparison to the whole than our entire planet is. Way bigger. Way fucking bigger. And look at how small imagine how small the single pixel is. That's where we are. That's way more than where we are. And we're chained to that. Anything happens to that little fucking pixel and we're gone. We have to spread out. You know, for one thing, this planet's too damn crowded. For another thing, there's too much bullshit here. It's time for us to forage out on our own and find our own destiny. You know, instead of always being beholden to what people here think. You know, a new planet means a new destiny, a new system of values. You can try out something different, something new. And human beings aren't, constantly under threat of sudden extinction because, oh no, a giant solar flare. Woof. Hey, what's that little charred cinder called? Oh, I think they used to be called Earth a long time ago. Back when there was life on it. So we gotta get out of here. This place is not safe. There have been something like 63 mass extinctions in the history of the planet, maybe more. Not good. Really not good. We gotta get the fuck out of here, folks. How do you feel about Rand Paul? You know, I agree with Rand Paul's controversial statement that business owners should be allowed to discriminate. And that's been widely misinterpreted by people into thinking that I support discrimination. I don't. I just don't support taking away business owners' rights to do what they want with their own damn business. You know, if you own a business, you should be able to run it as you see fit. And if you want to run it like a jackass that says, oh, no blacks, well, you know what? You're going to lose money. You're going to lose the money of black people, and you're going to lose the money of people who are, despise you for being a racist. I wouldn't go to a business like that. And that's what Rand Paul said on the Rachel Maddow show, and I can respect that. What I cannot respect is that immediately he disavowed that statement, and he acted as though it was Rachel Maddow's fault. He said it was a huge mistake to go on Rachel Maddow. Oh, it was such a hostile interview. You know what? She didn't fucking make you say that, asshole. If that's something you don't believe, then you shouldn't have fucking said it in the first place. You should have said, no, I believe that businesses should not have the right to discriminate against anyone and that they should have to serve everyone equally, and yeah. You should have said that. If that's what you believe, but that's not what you believe. You believe something that's a little bit controversial, that might cost you some political capital, that might cost you the election, and so you back away like every other fucking politician. You know, so yeah, you suck. Sorry. But you do. Are you ashamed of your shameless self-promotion? I just included that because it's such a stupid question. Because if it's shameless self-promotion, then how could I be ashamed of it? No, I'm not ashamed of my shameless self-promotion. If I was ashamed of my shameless self-promotion, it wouldn't be shameless self-promotion, it would be shameful self-promotion. And it's not. It's shameless self-promotion because I don't have any shame about promoting myself. If I did have shame about promoting myself, then I would have, I don't know, 10 subscribers now. Hi guys, I'm the Amazing Atheist, and I'm going to talk about... Yeah, no one cares. Self-promotion's the way to go. Are there any circumstances in which you would defend religion? Yes. In fact, it comes up sometimes. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone and they'll say, we should fucking ban religion. Just get it out of the fucking face of the earth. Fucking destroy it. Or I'll meet Christians who say, like, we need to fucking outlaw Islam. We need to ban, or, you know, even in, you know, countries where they have laws now, like, ban the burqa. I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. No. No. You don't have this you're not going to make a law against the way people think. You can't make some law that says, oh, you're not allowed to think like that. Sorry. You know, I don't care how harmful or detrimental a religion is. If people believe it, if people want to believe it, that is their fucking right. To say that we should outlaw religion, you know, that is such a huge, gigantic blow against personal freedom that I cannot abide by it. How tall are you? Because if you were like 7'4", that would be awesome to go along with your attitude, which rocks. Just asking how tall are you. I wish I was 7'4", but I'm not. I'm 6'6", which is still pretty tall, but no 7'4", unfortunately. Being tall is cool. I'd love to be taller. I'd love to be 7 feet tall. I'd love to be 8 feet tall. If I could be like 20 feet tall, I would. I'd be a fucking giant. I'd go around smashing buildings and eating people. I wouldn't care. Do happy moments in your life ever lead to a great sadness when you realize that a day will come when the things that made you happy are utterly gone from the universe? You know, I don't really care about that. You know, the universe will be utterly gone one day, at least in its current form. Everything is ephemeral. Ephemeral? Ephemeral. Ephemeral! I think that's how it's pronounced. Temporary is what I'm getting at. Everything is transient. It's all going away. But that's not what matters. It's not about, ooh, is it going to last forever? Like, if something doesn't last forever, it doesn't have any significance. That's not true. You know, it's here now. It's in the moment. That's all that matters to me. It exists. I don't care if it existed before or if it will exist in the future. It exists now, and I'm living in now. You know, so it doesn't bother me. At least not very much. And not very often. Why do you think atheist arguments are so ineffective at convincing theists? And no, you can't use the theists are stupid argument. Well, why can't I use the theists are stupid argument? That's like asking, you know, tell me why these celestial bodies are attracted to each other, but don't bring up that gravity shit. No, I mean, if it's the truth, I'm going to tell you the truth. If at least the truth as I perceive it is, yes, theists are stupid. And they're not stupid like, no, they're stupid because they don't understand rational arguments. They cannot follow a chain of logic from point A to point B. All they care about is, does it make me feel good? And if the sad thing is that they would feel a lot better if they were rational beings who understood the arguments and they could follow them to their logical conclusions, then they could have a much more humble sense of who they are in the universe and what they mean. And they don't have to be these jackasses. They don't need, you know, it kind of goes back to the question I just answered about the need to be eternal. Oh, I have to last forever or else I don't mean anything. No! You're here now. You're here and you're interesting. You have things about you that are fascinating and unique. Or at least somewhat unique, yeah. You're a person. You're very complicated. You know, you may not seem it when you're sitting there being a jackass and saying, Jesus, oh, he's amazing. But you are. You're a complicated being. And you have complex interests and complex thoughts and complex feelings. And that's not enough for you. You gotta be, oh, I'm eternal. And in being eternal, or aspiring to be eternal, you're giving up a lot of what makes you special now, what makes you unique, because you're basically agreeing to homogenize yourself and join a collective and be boring. Don't be boring. Be unique and interesting and an individual. You can do it. I believe you. I believe in you, rather. You have it in you. Trust me. When the fuck are you going to man up and debate Stottles? Stottles, for those of you who don't know, is this anarchist kid here on YouTube. Never. I don't know. I mean, I agreed to debate him a few times, but, you know, nothing's really ever come of it, so I guess never. He has my Skype. If he wants to talk, he can talk, but I'm not really into doing some public debate with someone who really doesn't have anyone's ear. I mean, if people really gave a shit about what Stottles had to say, he'd have an audience by now. But he doesn't, so I'm assuming that people really just don't give a fuck. So yeah, I'm not. You know, and the thing is, like, he always wants to do an in-person debate, which makes me think he wants to jump me with some shit. Like, if he wants to debate me, make a video against me, and maybe I'll make one back. Why does it have to be this in-person thing where we can go back and forth? I mean, I know that maybe that's a lot more interesting to some people, but really it's not. People want to see well-reasoned ideas presented in a coherent manner. And if he can make a video towards me that is that, then I'll make one back. But I really don't watch his videos, so he'd have to tell me that he was doing it and show me where to find him. So if he's already done that and I just don't know about it, that's why. Yeah, here's a good question. What happened to all the money of the people who donated to free speech vids? I've had a few people come and be like, oh yeah, free speech vids, it was a scam. This is something that's kind of purported by this guy named I keep wanting to say Natural Selector, but Natural Selector's fucking dead. I forget the fucker's name, but anyway, the donation money for free speech vids was used to build and maintain free speech vids, and to keep it on its web host, and to, you know, search out new talent and keep the site running. But the site couldn't make money, it couldn't sustain itself, and even with the donations, it wasn't making enough. So it fucking died. And, you know, that doesn't mean that I'm never going to attempt something like that again. It just means that that particular incarnation of that idea died. And it wasn't fucking easy for me to fucking let that idea die. I'd been working on that for like 8 or 9 months, trying to get that site to work somehow. I tried everything that I was capable of doing, and, you know, it didn't pan out. So I put a lot of my money into it too, and I lost that money, and the people who donated money to the site, you know, they realized that they were taking that risk too. And I have not had one person ask me for their donation back, because they understand that. The only people who don't seem to understand that are these idiots who are just looking for something to criticize. So, yeah, the money that we collected for free speech vids went into free speech vids, but free speech vids failed. So, you know, you could say the money was wasted, but I don't think it was. I think we made a sincere effort at trying to thwart YouTube, but we just didn't have enough support, so nothing came of it. But we'll try again in the future. And hopefully the people who donated to free speech vids will be there to donate at the next attempt at fucking getting some freedom on the internet, away from this YouTube monopoly. You often mention top YouTubers such as Fred, Ray William Johnson, and SXE Phil. You seem to be far more judgmental of Fred and Johnson than you are of SXE Phil. Is that a misconception on my part, or do you like SXE Phil more than the other two, and if so, why? I do like SXE Phil better. I still think he's a wuss who censors himself to be more friendly to the YouTube audience, which I do too, and I am a wuss for it. But at least he's talking about something. It may not always be the most brilliant thing in the world. Sometimes it's just, stupid celebrity gossip or these, inconsequential news stories that really don't mean much to me. But at least it's fucking something. Ray William Johnson just shows you a clip of like a kitten falling down a well, and then he's like, "Oh, I guess that's a wet pussy." Ha 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 ha. Yeah, yeah. And then Fred is just like, "Hey, it's Fred! Look at me, I'm doing wacky shit, jumping around, hey, like a little kid. It's funny, hey." No, it's not. But at least SXE Phil's doing something, and I appreciate that. He does what he does well, and I watch some of his videos. I'm an average SXE Phil viewer. I watch a video of his maybe once or twice a month, and it's usually pretty good. And I like it, so fuck anyone who disagrees. So, what does incest today... Why does incest today deform babies when the world was made by Adam and Eve, it was made by God and populated by Adam and Eve, brought normal babies? If you don't get what I'm saying, but you think this is interesting, just shoot me a message. I get what you're saying. Incest today makes these little fucking mutant spawns, but... back in the day, when Adam and Eve were together and the only way for the human species to populate itself was through incest, how come the babies were okay then? Well, obviously it's because there was no fucking Adam and Eve. But I mean, there was a lot of incest in early human history. There pretty much had to have been. But the reason, the thing you have to remember about incest in general is just like, the problem with incest babies is that it's not like they're going to come out mutants. It's that in families you have these recessive genes that if you have two people from the same family having sex, and the recessive gene is more likely to manifest itself, and a lot of recessive genes can hold the keys to very nasty things. If there's no other gene to dominate that recessive gene, then it comes out. And, so the less biodiversity you have, the less likely you are to have a healthy offspring. That genetic diversity that comes from two people with separate gene pools meeting and having sex with one another, that is important to the survival of the species, because otherwise they produce these unhealthy offspring. But, the reason that it didn't work that way in the Adam and Eve days is because there was no fucking Adam and Eve. But even if you're just looking at early incest, I mean, I would imagine it's because there was a lot less genetic diversity at the time, too. I mean, even if you fucked someone who was not, related to you, I mean, they were still related to you because there had been less generations of human beings, and people were more closely related even if they were not relatives. So... yeah, I mean, there was a lot less genetic diversity. There'd been a lot less mutation. This is, 200,000 years ago we're talking about the dawn of Homo sapiens. So, yeah, that's probably why. What are your views regarding the concepts of transhumanism and controlled evolution? I'm all for it. I'm all for transhumanism in general because transhumanism is the best way forward, because we're in a situation right now where we need to evolve a lot if we're going to deal with the issues that are facing us. We have nuclear weapons. Pretty soon we might have stuff that's stronger than nuclear weapons. We have all these warring factions and all these warring ideologies, and none of them are smart enough to just sit down and talk it out. So what we really need is a massive evolutionary upgrade, and I think the only way we can get that is through transhumanism, because if we rely on the old-fashioned, slow biology method, then it takes hundreds of thousands of years to notice any sort of significant change, and that's not going to work for us in this instance. We need augmentation. We need to suddenly get a whole lot smarter if we're going to deal with these issues. Otherwise, we're just going to die. So transhumanism or death, and I choose transhumanism. Out of the four horsemen of atheism, who is your favorite and why? Out of the four horsemen, I gotta go with Hitchens. even though I disagree with him politically pretty strongly, I just like his attitude so much. Dennett bores the fuck out of me. I can't stand him, whether he be speaking or he be writing. Just cannot get past how fucking dull he is. Sam Harris, really smart guy, really interesting ideas. I really like him too, but I just like Hitchens' asshole attitude a little bit better. Dawkins, he's okay. I don't really have a big problem with Dawkins, but I'm not really a huge Dawkins fan either. He's had some really interesting ideas in the past, but like I said, I think he's wrong on his individual selection model, and I think that he has become complacent in his ideas, and that he's not really the same revolutionary thinker that he was back in the 70s. I think that he's a pale imitation of what he once was, and he has surrounded himself with yes men who just agree with everything he says, and he no longer has the ability to think outside the box or to question his own assumptions or do any of that stuff. I think that he, his ideas about, and most of his arguments for atheism are very rehashed and very unoriginal. Harris brings forth much more original arguments. Hitchens brings forth much more emotional arguments that are a lot more relevant to normal people. Dennett is just, like I said, boring. I really don't know much about him because he's just so dull. And then there's great guys like Victor J. Stenger and Dan Barker, who are not really in the Four Horsemen category, but are still really great authors who write really great books, especially Stenger's book, The New Atheism, which actually refutes a lot of the Christian arguments against Dawkins, Harris, and Hitchens, and Dennett. He actually defends the Four Horsemen from the counter-arguments, and that's actually a really great book because it gives you a lot more conventional arguments that are more tuned to today's crafty form of theism that has attempted to answer people like Dawkins. And then finally, a question that my friend Galen made me add at the last minute, and it's, what could you say are the redeeming values of the Star Wars prequels trilogy? And the answer is nothing. They just suck utterly. And I'd probably give a better answer, but my throat is very sore from talking for this long. I really don't know how people on the radio do it. I'll see you guys later.